Well, it's the last day of August, and we got some official, useful, entertaining, old school Brooklyn street tough guy stuff to talk about. No offense to you nerds out there, all due respect at all, but I ain't one of you guys, so there won't be nerdy talk going on here. Just typical old school Brooklyn tough guy stuff. And we're over out at USC. It's a private espresso bar in Brooklyn, located at 45 Avenue West, corner of West 12th Street. And yeah, this is where you can find the toughest of the tough guys that were ever tough. Find us in areas like this.
Illuminati is a thing you need to watch out for. They want to depopulate and slave us so much more. World domination, I'll get into that later. I'm hardcore, fierce and sexy. You're just a hater. You deserve the ridicule because you're an absolute zero. I'm the keeper of the chalice, a rock and roll hero. I'm not an idiot nobody listens to, because I'm not a failure in life like you. Let's talk about Bill Gates and the mark of the beast and the orgies in the streets at the Catholic feasts and Bill and Hillary's human trafficking ring. And George Soros got the money to pay for everything. Socialism is for losers, working for the devil. Chumps that can't fight, they ain't on my level. It takes an evil one to try to debunk a doubter, so I'd rather die than stop talking about it. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. Watch out for the Illuminati. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. Watch out for the Illuminati. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. Watch out for the Illuminati. Watch out for the Illuminati.
And there's USC right there. Great place. They're open for business. 45 Avenue West if you want to stop by there. Welcome to the MC Too Tall Show. I'm hardcore, fierce, and sexy, and thus your hardcore, fierce, and sexy host, MC Too Tall. And I figured I'd talk about this thing that happened somewhere in England, somewhere in the UK, before it becomes old news. There's footage going around taken by a obviously creepy predator guy. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, you're just picking on the guy because he's a brown man living in a predominantly white people's continent and so forth. And I don't care if the guy is brown. You could be whiter than me and still be a damn creep. You know? You could be purple, you could be orange, you could be green and still be a creep. But I don't think if there are green people out there, I don't think they're creeps because, you know, the Hulk is green. He ain't a creep. But then again, I saw an episode of The Incredible Hulk many years ago where a guy named Del Fry was pretty creepy. He was a guy that turned into the bad Hulk. And yeah, he was like a murderous kind of guy. But anyway, before we go off into a tangent about fictional characters, which I'll get into that a little later on this show, I promise you. We're talking about what's going on in the UK. So, there's these two little girls walking around. What they say is a 14-year-old girl and her 12-year-old sister. So, these cute little innocent, angelic-looking girls walking through the park, and some creepy stalker guy whoops out his phone and starts following them around. Like, he's getting ready to, I don't know, he's getting ready to try to probably abduct them, probably nab at least one of them, and violently sexually assault or whatever. But, apparently FAFO is a trend. And that FAFO trend must have followed all the way to the UK, because the 14-year-old girl whoops out a machete and a hatchet. I think it's a machete. It might be a butcher knife. I can't tell. But a really big frickin' knife. So she's got this huge knife and a hatchet. Whoops them out on the guy. She's screaming her freaking head off. And they always say, if they always advise girls that if you're being followed around by somebody you think is going to try to rob or rape you, scream, make a scene. So that's what this little girl did. She was smart enough to scream her head off, make a big scene, protect herself and her sister with these two weapons of war. Well, at least they'd be weapons of war in medieval times, but still. She whoops out these two weapons, screams her head off, and you would think the guy would back off. And he did back off, but he kept his phone on. And then the pussy goes to the police with it. Now, instead of the police saying, well, what the hell are you doing following these two little innocent girls around? And instead of them arresting him for being a creep following these two little girls around with his phone out, videotaping them, they find the little girl, the 14-year-old, and they arrest her. She's a minor, but I guess the laws are different in the UK or whatever, and they arrest this minor for bringing protection with herself. And I think if she didn't bring these weapons with her, she and or her sister would be victims of this creep. And I don't care. I'm in the US, okay? I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in the tough Brooklyn neighborhood of Gravesend. And I don't care what officials in England have to say when I point things like this out. There's a trend that's been going on for about 2 decades. 2 decades this goes under wraps and nobody says nothing about it. People who originated from foreign countries outside of the UK are going around abducting little girls. They're going around abducting little girls and violently raping them, grooming them, and then selling them off as prostitutes. And they're abducting people and pretty much shanghaiing them into a prostitution ring. And apparently this is known among the adolescent girl community, because this girl, I guess her sister wanted to go for a walk in the park. I guess her sister's a little bit more naive and innocent than she is, but at the same time, the older sister didn't want to let her little sister down, so went out with her for a walk in the park. And who's to say if the sister even knew she was carrying a hatchet and a knife with her? But it's actually a good thing that she was. But it's a bad thing that she had to. That adolescent girls are in a situation where they have to walk around armed like that. And it's the government taking away the civilians' means of protecting themselves and then promising protection, which is a promise they cannot keep. And thus, you have adolescent girls being abducted by people born in foreign lands and forced into prostitution. First, the abductor rapes the girl, then they get their friends to join in on raping the girl, and then they market the girl for prostitution, always against the girl's will. And if it's a minor, if it's somebody under the age of 17, 18 years old, it's always without consent because they're under the age of consent. That's the way it is in most civilized lands. And this is done on a regular basis, and these bastards aren't nabbed, probably because they don't want to offend the culture of these people, citing that they are brown. And it doesn't matter how brown they are, it doesn't matter how white they are, orange, purple, yellow, gunmetal gray, whatever color they are. If they're being a creep, they should be cited for it. There should be some sort of sex predator database that these people should go on. If they haven't committed a violent crime, especially a violent sex crime. And if they have committed a violent sex crime, throw them in jail, stick them in there for the rest of their lives, and put them with general population, and somehow, some way, leak to the general population why they're there. Wink, wink. And that's where the problem lies, folks. That's where the problem lies. The authorities take away the sovereign right of a person to protect themselves and make a promise they can't deliver on to protect them, leaving them vulnerable for these sleazy attacks. And I'm telling you, in these European countries where the gun laws are strict, somehow, some way, guns are going to get smuggled into these areas. People are going to figure out how to manufacture their own weapons if they have to, their own firearms if they have to, and fight back against what appears to be an invasion of people's lives, an invasion of the innocence of children. And there are actually people in comment sections where this video is posted. Like, this video is posted in several sites and things like that. And in the comment sections, you actually have people defending the creepy stalker with the camera phone. And it goes to show you how screwed society is. And it's getting to a point where it's people who are of this sick and twisted mindset versus people who call and cry for normalcy again. They cry for normality. And the people who are against that normality and believe everything about your everyday life is somehow part of a society that degrades specific demographics. And they're wrong for thinking that. But it's going to get to a point where there's going to be violent, bloody confrontations all throughout Europe of people with two highly contrasting ideals. And here's where the problem lies. Who let it get that far? You put the wrong people in government. You let you let a few of these wackos slip through the cracks and get government jobs, get government offices, and I understand, don't be racist, don't be prejudiced, don't be this, don't be that, but where's the balance of radical Islamic mayors in the UK and mayors who are not radical Islamists? Where's the balance? I mean, you let one slip through the cracks, okay. Rochdale, there's a radical Muslim, there's a radical Islamist, extremist, mayor of Rochdale. Then you just let it, spread out like a spider plant. Rochdale, Yorkshire, Manchester, London. You see where I'm going with this, right? And so they're taking over the UK. And I had seen a clip. It was like a video simulcast of Jesse Kelly's radio show. Because besides doing I'm Right at night on the First TV, he's got a daytime radio show. Which I believe the First TV should also syndicate that and put it on their TV channel. But I find it and I watch it, and he says on there what's happening in the UK is what the communists want here. And when he says communists, yes, he does mean people like Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao and people like that, Che Guevara, Fidel, and so forth. But he also means the modern Democrat Party, which has been infiltrated by Stalinists. Some would call Marxists. I say they're Stalinists. Because they want the brutality and lethality as punishment for dissent. They want to silence dissenting voices with violence and blood-curdling death. And they want chaos so that they could come in as the saviors and bring the order. And it's very important that the hero does not become the villain. Like, for example, let's take Washington, D.C., for example. I'm all for the federalizing of Washington, D.C. It's the nation's capital. But while still wearing this hat, I would be in disagreement with Trump to do that to Chicago or New York. What the people of Chicago need to do is stop looking towards voting Republican as a taboo. And what the people of my city here in New York need to do is the same. Stop looking at voting Republican as a taboo, as a thing that must not be done. If anything, the thing you must never do in that voting booth is vote for anybody whose name is in column A of that ballot. That's the Democrat column. Go column B all the way down, unless they're also running as a conservative. Then you vote them in as a conservative, not a Republican. That's what I did when voting for Steve Chen. Like, I voted column B all the way down until I got to his state senator's row. When I got to the row of his state senators, yeah, I saw column A, you and Chen. Column B, Republican Party, Steve Chen. And then immediately over that was the Conservative Party, also Steve Chan. And I voted for Steve Chan, but I did not vote for him as a Republican. He's the only one I didn't vote for as a Republican. I voted for him in the conservative column. Because while they might not take specific names to my understanding, they do tally up who votes when representing which party. And I wanted there to be a record that somebody voted for him as a conservative. And I might have been the only one in the whole city that voted for him as a conservative instead of a Republican, but I still wanted that to reflect in the overall thing. Because I didn't like the way Ewan Chen ran her campaign. Ewan Chen ran a dirty, dirty campaign. She was the incumbent. She ran a dirty campaign slinging all the mud at Steve Chan, putting out falsehoods about him being a slumlord. You're going to tell me this guy was a combat veteran. He's going to go out in combat, protecting his fellow man, protecting his fellow soldiers in combat. Then he's going to come to New York City, enroll in the police department, and for many years as a New York cop, risk his life again in these dangerous New York streets to protect and serve his community, only to take attendance and be a slumlord. The math didn't math. The math didn't math. And the cherry on the top of that was that they were saying that the Conservative Party supports him, as if that's a bad thing. So they tried to make out the Conservative Party supporting Steve Chan was some sort of a bad thing. And it's so not a bad thing that I purposely, instead of voting for him as a Republican, voted for him as a conservative. And I'm even thinking of switching my official party from Republican to conservative. Even though Republican's a major party and they're doing a lot of cleaning up and stuff, but I like a lot of what the conservatives are doing, and I like the conservative movement. I did at one time think I was a libertarian. I was going to switch over to libertarian as far back as 2008. I voted for the libertarian candidate for president in 2012. There was a guy named Gary Johnson. And he was a guy who they demonized for saying we don't belong in Syria. But he said it in a sarcastic manner, because when they mentioned a city in Syria, Aleppo, he said, well, what is Aleppo? He didn't say it because he genuinely didn't know what the hell Aleppo was. He was saying it because a lot of the American people don't know or care what the hell Aleppo was, which further illustrates if we can't pronounce it, we don't belong there. In other words, if it's on the other side of the world and we can't pronounce it, and we never heard of it up until that mention of it, then we don't belong there. That's what he was trying to say with that. But they took it, but what they did was to destroyed his credibility and made out like he was too stupid to know what Aleppo was. Oh, he's too stupid to know what Aleppo is. He's got the gall to run for president. And I would have voted for him if Trump wasn't on the ballot. I voted for Trump, not in 2016, not Gary Johnson. I don't know. People may have believed that I did. I may have said something alluding to that. I didn't mean to say anything like that. I was in full support of Donald Trump because Donald Trump was not your everyday Republican. And yes, Bush and company did screw up the name and reputation of the Republican Party. And having people like Mitt Romney didn't help. Having people like Chris Christie didn't help. Having people like, Jeb Bush didn't help. Nikki Haley. You know, these are the neocons that we're trying to weed out of the party. We need constitutional people. We need either strong MAGA movement people like Donald Trump himself, like J.D. Vance, who originally wasn't on board, but he is now. People like that. Marco Rubio, who originally wasn't on board, but he is now. People like that. A nice little mixture of people like that. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene is all MAGA. So we need a combination of people like that and constitutional people like a Chip Roy, the congressman from Texas, and Rand Paul, son of Ron Paul, by the way. Rand Paul is a senator from Kentucky. He's the other senator besides Mitch McConnell out of Kentucky. So we need more people like Rand Paul, less people like Mitch McConnell. Less people like Lindsey Graham in the party. Hell, no Jeb Bushes, that's for sure. And when we weed out the neocons and the spineless people that want to go along to get along and be bipartisan, which really means they're caving into the radical agenda of the Democrats, we weed these people out who are either way too strong to stand up for war and quick to start a war, or are so weak that they cave into whatever the Democrats tell them to cave into, and they get weeded out. We have a good party again. So this is why I have not yet left the Republican Party, because we're seeing the neocons and the spineless Republicans that cave into the Democrats getting weeded out of the party. But if I was to leave the party, it would not be to go to the Democrats. Hell no. I say, choose your Republicans wisely, but choose no Democrats. And if the option's there to go with a conservative, a strong conservative that's capable of winning in November, then go for it. That's my stance. That's where I go with my vote. I carefully analyze where each individual Republican stands. I completely rule out any Democrat. If there's a D next to your name, you're not getting my vote. So completely rule out all Democrats. Carefully sift through the record of each and every Republican running for office. Look at how strong a chance the conservative candidate has. And if certain Republicans are also on the conservative ticket, move that pencil over, fill in the conservative bubble for that candidate, because it's a vote that'll get tallied in regardless. So you'll get your guy in, whether he gets in representing the Republican Party or Conservative Party, but you take your shot and hope he gets in as a conservative. That's how I look at it. And now, getting back to that part of the conversation that I promised about fictional characters and things like that in comic books, there really should be a DC Marvel cross promotion graphic novel. You know, graphic novel is like a slightly thicker book than any normal comic book. It actually has a hard binder to it. Has a nice, thick, glossy cover and back cover. It has some of the top artists doing the artwork inside. Clear, vivid coloring, and an epic storyline to go with it. And they should do that and make it something along the lines of The Incredible Hulk versus Bane. Because there are people that argue, there were actually DC freaks that argue that Bane could actually beat up Hulk. There are people that believe the Hulk could never beat up Bane. And they should do a cross promotion, a Marvel version where the Hulk wins, and a DC version where the Hulk gets the better of Bane, but Bane slips away like a pussy and runs away. Because when all is said and done, Bane is still a villain. So you can't have, even if it's another promotion's hero, you can't have your villains beating their heroes. Okay? Like if DC, give you a for instance, if DC put out a comic where it's the Joker versus Captain America, and they actually had the balls to make Captain America lose, you bet I'd be pissed. But at the same time, I'm not going to get into fist fights over it. You know, you got people getting into fist fights over whether or not Bruce Wayne could beat up Tony Stark or vice versa. Tony Stark, sorry. You got people that are actually getting mad over that and getting into fist fights. I've seen, one time I'm hanging out at Otto's Shrunken Head, and I've seen two people having a conversation about comic books. One's a DC person, one's a Marvel person, and I forgot which two superheroes they were arguing over. I think it was Lobo versus Dracos or something like that. And the guy backing up Dracos, or sticking up for Dracos, actually punched a Lobo comic book reader in the face. And they took it outside, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And it's all intertwined because they're part of, like, the same vampiric fraternity or house or whatever. And something, you know, I've mentioned something like that. Like they're both part of the Sabretooth clan or they're both part of the House of Sabretooth. And so the father figure, who was still alive at the time, had to go out after them outside, break it up and make them shake hands, call them back in and have a drink and smooth it out and squash everything. But this was an argument that started over comic books. God's honest truth, right hand in the air, full stop, true story. You know, total silliness. People fighting over who's better, who could kick whose ass, Dracos or Lobo. Meanwhile, anybody could pen a comic book making one beat up the other in either direction. But I just wanted to address that. Fighting over comic book characters getting to physical altercations over comic book characters is stupid. I shouldn't have to say this, but we're in a time where it needs to be said. I'll tell you what's not fictional, though, is God. And people who don't respect God end up failing in life and losing everything. And that's the God's honest truth. And that's why on today I say, respect God, watch out for the Illuminati, follow, share, comment, subscribe, stay strong, keep kicking that slang. It's your boy in the building, hip-hop legend, recording engineer, underground rock and roll hero, MC Too Tall. Yeah.